On Friday, April 9th, 2021, Earl Simmons, also known as DMX, took his last breath at the age of 50 after a brief stint in the hospital. The hip-hop community was in mourning because it had lost someone truly deserving of the title of hip-hop legend, a title which is thrown around loosely but only few are truly deserving of. In order to understand what made his music so great, we have to understand a bit of his backstory. He was born on December 18, 1970 in New York to teenage parents. He was raised by a single mother as his father left shortly after Earl's birth. He had a troubled childhood. He suffered from asthma and ended up in the hospital emergency room frequently because of breathing problems. To top it off, he was hit by a drunk driver and suffered injuries when he was still a kid. He experienced further hardship in the form of severe beatings from his mother and her boyfriends, to the point that he lost his teeth and was bruised and cut badly on his face. In the BET documentary Rough Riders Chronicles, he recalled a summer when he was only allowed to leave his room to use the bathroom. By the time he was in the 5th grade, he was kicked out of school and sent to a children's home where he spent a year and a half. Earl often escaped the hardship of his life by wandering the streets of New York and spending his time with stray dogs in the streets at night. During his time in the group home, Earl bonded with the other boys over their love for hip-hop. The boys encouraged Earl to rap after being impressed by his performances. It was in this same group home where he came across the Oberheim DMX drum machine, which he used for making drum loops. Upon leaving the group home and returning home, he met a local rapper named Ready Ron whom Earl beatboxed for. Earl then adopted the name Darkman X, or DMX for short, after the drum machine he used in the boys' home. X then served a prison term during which he spent time writing lyrics and performing in the recreation center. In 1984, he was imprisoned again, and during that time, he took rap more seriously and spent time writing songs. He also wound up meeting fellow rapper K Solo, who was incarcerated in the same correctional facility. Upon his release, he began producing and selling his own mixtapes and eventually got a record deal with Columbia Records in 1992 after he appeared in the Source magazine's Unsigned Hype column, which was a big deal at the time. He made a number of guest appearances alongside Jay-Z, The Lox, LL Cool J, and Mace, to name a few. It is around this time that a famous rap battle between DMX and Jay-Z occurred, but substantial footage of it isn't publicly available. In February of 1998, he released his debut album It's Dark and Hell is Hot, which ended up selling over 4 million copies. In December of that same year, he released his second album Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, which also sold more than 3 million copies. Just by listening to X's music in the first 2 albums, it becomes evident that he had faced hardship and struggled with balancing his good and dark side. Tracks such as Damien, The Convo, Let Me Fly, Look Through My Eyes all point to the fact that X was not simply the violent street thug that he appeared to be. He was a man who wrestled to tame his dark side, but simultaneously embraced it. One of his most profound songs, and one of my personal favorites, is Slipping, a song in which he describes his childhood and the struggles he faced up to that point as a man. In all of this, I've not mentioned a key part of X's life: drug abuse. As a young man in the streets, X took part in robberies, often using dogs to scare his victims. At the age of 14, following a robbery, his mentor, Ready Ron, lit a blunt and passed it to X to smoke. He had not told X that the blunt was laced with crack cocaine. This led him down the path of a lifetime of drug addiction, which added on to the mental health issues he was already facing due to being treated as an unwanted person by the people closest to him. Rough Riders co-founder Dean and Wah mentioned in the Rough Riders Chronicles documentary that DMX would often spend time in a crack house and would no-show studio sessions due to being too high on drugs. As such, they'd struggle with getting him to write and record songs, and at times, they resorted to physically getting him out of the city so that he would not have easy access to drugs. Fast forward, and X had multiple run-ins with the law for weapons possession, animal cruelty, illegal substance possession, and other charges. He also faced a lot of personal issues, some of which included problems with his children and various baby mothers. In 2016, he passed out due to a drug overdose and had to be revived using an opioid antidote called Narcan. In brief, as he grew older, his personal issues seemed to overshadow his musical achievements. He put out less music over the years, and much of the news about the rapper in the later part of his career was not about his music, but his various personal issues. All that aside, what is it about DMX's music that attracted so many people? There are many factors, such as the lyricism, the beats, the voice, the delivery, the imagery, and so on. But I think the key factor was that X as an individual oozed authenticity and genuineness. That energy poured over into his music, and fans such as myself built an emotional connection to the music and by proxy to the man himself. Secondly, he poured a lot of emotion into his music. He managed to turn the pain he experienced throughout his life into amazing music that touched millions of people. The mixture of anger, joy, fear, distress, and various emotions helped paint X as a complete individual who embodies many of humanity's best and worst characteristics simultaneously. On his early albums, he had songs where he conversed with the devil and others where he talked to God. While it may seem like a contradiction, it's actually a reflection of X's humanity and his struggle with good and evil, a struggle that many people can relate to. In view of all of this, what is the legacy that X left behind? The first and most important parts of his legacy are his children. Earl left behind 17 kids. Unfortunately, in the midst of the tumultuous life that he lived, X ended up being estranged from his oldest son, Xavier. This is rather sad when you think about the fact that Earl himself grew up without a proper father figure, and that was passed on to his firstborn son. He also left behind films that he acted in, such as Belly and Cradle to the Grave. Most notable, DMX left behind a legacy of brilliant music that transcends culture and generations. His music inspired many that came after him, and his albums broke many records, making him a powerhouse in hip-hop. Unfortunately, part of his legacy is stained with the darker sides of his life. Nevertheless, this does not take away from the immense impact he had on the hip-hop industry. That's it for this one. Share, like, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and let me know your thoughts in the comments section. I'm Kondwan. See you in the next one.